Okay, all right. Hello everyone. I think for hello, Twitch viewer 14. Welcome. All right. So yeah, I think for today as a start, I'm going to talk a bit more about the cards. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about all the cards in this game. There are thousands of cards. I still don't know how many. Uh but I think at the start, I want to talk about probably at least some of the cards that I've seen a lot, and I think they are obviously they're of very high value. They are very powerful, and I think obviously they're hard to get, but I think at least people can try to aim to get these cards because I think they're really great. So for today, I'm gonna start with talking about Yellowjacket. Maybe that would be the card of the day. Right, I'll try to do that kind of a card of the day discussion sort of thing. So Yellowjacket, right? Very powerful cards. What is its effect? Well, so it's a 5 for 43 life on land card. Obviously, it's a limited legendary, so it's quite expensive. Again, I don't know the exact value of this card. Like, if you're more interested in that, go on to Discord and there will be people discussing that. Like 1 mm, 0.8, I don't know. But yeah, 5 for 43, and the effect is at the start of the turn, your opponent's whole hand, lose 5 until played. Okay, these are all very important. The opponent's hand lose 5 until played. And what is its play effect? The opponent's hand lose 24 this turn. Okay, this turn. So, well, we all probably heard, if you've seen this card, if you've heard of it, we all know that it's a very great card. But what makes this card so great, and why I would say this, as long as it makes sense for the deck, it should be included. For example, I'm playing a Science Life on Land hybrid deck. So that means Yellowjacket can fit in, right? And so if it makes sense in your deck, it's a very powerful one. So how good it is and what exact value, no, obviously not exact value because every game changes, but the expected value or value on average, right? Does it actually bring in gameplay? That's kind of when I was discussing about this game. I mentioned that when you look at a card, you can't just read its effect. You have to consider how much effect does it actually have in a gameplay. Okay, so for Yellowjacket, what does it mean? First of all, we need to consider when we draw a card. I mean, you can do some, I would say, thinking, right? This doesn't need to be calculated, but just based on the how the game is run, you can probably imagine, oh, maybe for any given card, I will probably draw it on turn 3, or at least on average, right? Because you get 5 cards in the beginning, you try to play 3 per round per turn, and so that means, you know, on average you draw the card on average on turn 3. I actually did a more precise calculation for this, just based on probability, and I think, again, obviously my calculation could be wrong, but the average should be like 2.9 for a given card, right? Like, it means for any given card, you're probably going to draw it on the turn 2.9. So obviously that is with proper card cycling. As I mentioned, that's a very important thing in this game, meaning that you want to play 3 cards and draw 3 cards all the time, because again, that will help you draw the new cards, gain their effect, trigger their effect, and so on. So very important that you actually have the proper card cycling. So obviously, ideally 3 cards per turn. So there's that. So if you draw it on turn 3, that means there are obviously a few ways to calculate this, but let's assume it's a 5-round game where most competitive games are like that, more or less. Obviously, if you're just losing 3 rounds or 4 rounds, or win in 3 or 4 rounds, the game goes very differently. But we'll talk about a game that's just very close throughout, right? 5 rounds. So that means if you draw it on turn 3, if you can hold it for as long as 13 additional rounds, so until the end of the game, right? So how much value does it bring in that case? So let's assume it's holding, since you draw it from turn 3, you hold it forever. So the base value is 43, you get it, and then every turn it generates 25 power. Why is that? Because it's not opponent hand losing 5 this turn, it's losing 5 this round. Sorry, losing 5 until played. So it means that all those will be accumulative, right? So in most scenarios, opponents will eventually play those cards in their hand. So as long as they're playing every card in their hand, no matter if it's this turn or 10 turns after this, doesn't matter. You will get that value from the Yellowjacket trigger. So it's almost guaranteed of 25, unless there are games where I think there are certain cards where you hold in your hand forever. Like, for example, I think the Couscous could be one of those cards. You just hold it forever. Then that means it triggers less. But in most scenarios, I would say probably 95% of the time, it will trigger like, well, 25 per turn. So you will have that trigger for 12 turns. The situation is a bit different in the last turn because you only have the effect on 3 cards, right? Because opponent is only gonna play the 3 cards, and the 2 cards already they got the debuff, they won't get played at all in this game. So that means in the last round, you only get 15 value, right? And then obviously when you play this in the last round, there's the trigger for 24 minus 24 for all the cards. Obviously opponent will only play 3, so that is again 24 times 3. So what does that mean? It means if you get this Yellowjacket on average during turn 3 and you hold it forever, you use this as your holding card, you will gain 430 power just for this card. I'm not gonna do the other calculation on stream, but I did some other calculation on stream for other cards, other very powerful cards. For example, the Couscous. The result comes out to be something over 300. Obviously, the calculation wasn't exact, but Couscous, one of the strongest holding cards. You gain 4 power accumulatively. It's getting more and more. But even that, it's worse to hold than Yellowjacket. It's losing by almost 100 points. That's just for holding this card forever. Okay, but sometimes, obviously, I'll talk about this later. Yellowjacket, if it's just a great holding card, then great. But it also has other means. You still want to play this. So in most cases, especially in a lot of my gameplay, I find myself holding the Yellowjacket for 2, 3, 4 turns. I would say on average, probably between 2 and 3. Yeah, usually I don't play it straight away unless I have to, but I would say on average 2 to 3, maybe more likely 3, right? If you hold it for 3 turns, how much value does it bring? Again, it's very similar calculation. It brings 190. So that is still great. Still, with 190 for 5 energy, it's still among the top cards in this game, right? And what if you don't hold Yellowjacket at all? Well, if you draw it, you just play it, the start effect triggers once, and the play effect triggers, it's still 140. You still get 140 for 5 energy, which is obviously not the best, but it's still a solid card. 5 for 140 will be a card that I would still include in my deck. So what makes this card even greater, right? What makes this, in my opinion, as among the cards that I've seen in this game, and I've did some a little bit of analyzing in this game, I think Zeus will be the best card because it's both, right? It's both an engine and a tempo card, which is just brings so much more value to this card in actual gameplay. Meaning that if you feel like you're winning, if you don't need a tempo, right? For example, it's turn 3, you're leading by 300 points, and you can play a hand for 400 points. In that case, most likely, right, you're probably safe, right? If you lose, you're probably not gonna win it with the Yellowjacket, right? You play like that, and then you hold the Yellowjacket for more engine value. But if, say, it's the last round, you're almost tied with the opponent, and you probably want to generate probably up to 400 power per turn, what do? You play the Yellowjacket. Even if it's played on that turn, it still generates 140 just as a tempo play, right? If you play some other tempo play or some other buffed cards, it will help you to bring the total to say around 400. I would say like 400 is probably like something you want to aim for in this game, right? So that means this card, you can decide what you want to do with it. You can hold it for more engine value, you can play it to gain more tempo to try to win a round, or to try to not just straight up giving up a round, right? So for example, that I mean, for example, if you draw your hand, some of them are really low tempo cards, and it's turn 2. You really don't want to play too low impact card on turn 2 because that'll make the opponent lead by a lot when it's turn 3, and it will be very hard for you to put things back. So you play some good card along with the Yellowjacket. Obviously, you want to hold the Yellowjacket, but you play the Yellowjacket for tempo, and you can still fight for round 3. Not round 3, turn 3. Right, so I think that is exactly what makes this card probably the best card, at least in my opinion, so far the best card in the game. Other cards like, I mean, in terms of engine value, Couscous is close, but you know, not still lost by 100 if they're being holded for always. And then I was also looking at the, for example, light speed travel in a full science deck. So 17 science cards plus 1 light speed travel. Uh, Obviously for light speed travel, you'll need to play the card 3 times, and it will give you probably around, basically around 200 points per card, which is very good, but obviously not even close to the value the Yellowjacket can bring, right? And then, like, for example, another wildly popular card, Pika, the calculation is much simpler, right? Obviously you need to consider the permanent effect. Permanent effect is you always gonna generate a bit more than until played. I did some rough calculation. I might talk about it another day, but usually permanent power, permanent, you wanna multiply that by 1.8, and you can see what does that mean in a, if it's just raw power, right? So Pika, actually the end up the value, my calculation for now is on average 137, or 137 for 5. Yeah, which again is a card that I would play, but compared to Yellowjacket, all these cards, no matter if it's a tempo play, no matter if it's engine value, they just fall a bit short compared to Yellowjacket. So yeah, as I mentioned, this card will be included in a lot of decks, right? I can imagine the Planet X World Turtle deck, the Liberty, Statue of Liberty deck, obviously the deck I'm using, the Science Life on Land deck, all deck, as long as it makes sense, right? If you're playing like a full Science deck or a full Arts and Craft, or what is it, arts deck, Art and Culture, right? Art and Culture deck, you obviously don't want to include it because it will break the synergy of some certain cards. But if it makes sense, and if you can get your hand on this card, I would say please do so. This, in my honest opinion, one of the best card in this game. Right? Maybe the best. Right? Just based on that calculation and based on the raw value, the engine value, the tempo value, and more importantly, maybe most importantly, the flexibility. Right? For example, Couscous, a great engine card, but you can't play Couscous for tempo. It's actually negative tempo, right? Because it's or a negative play when you play it, because it will get rid of some of your permanent power generation. But this, the Yellowjacket card, totally different. So yeah, again, I'll try to do more of these card discussion maybe at the beginning of the stream, starting from now on. I think they're interesting. Like today when I was calculating the card values, obviously I would say my calculations are still flawed, but I'm trying to, well, at least as best approximation as I can find, and obviously considering what's actually happening in gameplay as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the discussion I want to have on Yellowjacket. And I also post this separately on YouTube, just as a guide or discussion. I don't want to call my video guide, but discussion video, and I think if you find it helpful, that would be great.